Okay, look. No one really likes the virtual world arc. Not even me, where, as so many of my private videos have shown, I am interested in the whole virtual reality be in the game kind of storytelling engine. And with its popularity these days, I can understand why the sixth incarnation of the series, Vrains, went that route with everything. Plus, it was something set up as so massively revolutionary in the prior Duel Monsters Quest filler episodes, but was otherwise abandoned as a storytelling medium outside of... Did any of the series use it at all after, 4 episodes during GX before we got to Vrains? Kind of why the entire arc was stupid in hindsight.
Regardless, this arc hinges on you liking Seto Kaiba as it explores his and Mokuba's backstory, their bond as brothers, and the developments which led to them becoming the people they are.
Which was hindered in the dub because of the bastardized characterization of Seto, which made most Western fans openly dislike the guy despite loving his cards. Including me, originally. It's why these videos have been a bit more Kaiba-centric than focusing on actions of the rest of the characters. When you fuck up the depiction of someone that badly, in a video series where I'm discussing my perspective of the series as I recap it, well, reparations were due.
And for manga fans, it was one that some took as conflicting with what had been explored about him previously in the early days of the manga, even though it was meant to inform those aspects of why there was such malicious evil in his heart, that Atem then penalty gamed out of existence, which in the manga left him comatose for literal months. A detail I did not mention before simply due to lack of time, and because it really didn't help him at all to executing a reformation of his character like self-introspection would, which the anime then had him go through by not leaving him effectively brain dead. But yeah, for many, what is explored here is kind of an ideal character piece to have all that happen.
Unfortunately, it's, 1, interrupting a more engaging story arc we're in the middle of at the worst possible time, ergo why the Dome arc was in a way better than this for as long as it dragged on. 2, develops several one-off tertiary antagonists into effective villains of the week, even though it then actually gives them character and dimension in doing so. 3, its retcons are pat and predictable. And 4, nothing really investing is within this whole situation. Even in the 4Kids version of things, we knew straight out that there was no way they were going to be trapped here. And yeah, 4Kids hurt this arc further by censoring how awful the antagonists of this arc were to make it seem as if their grievances were actually legitimate instead of the fault of their own actions. And with how unlikable they made Seto at times, you would almost be siding with the villains. The ironic thing is, by 4K standards, they actually mostly did right by the story points this time by not changing their core intents. It's just far weaker due to the characterization changes and dialogue substitutions.
The only thing it really had going for it was the mystery. Who was this kid that had it out for revenge against Seto Kaiba? We can guess why for their underlings, but why this and why now?
Though it makes sense from a storytelling standpoint why they chose this route of exploration, as Seto Kaiba's backstory didn't have much more than the basics in the manga to supply much of what we eventually did get with his nuances. And with his character as head of a massive corporation, well, corporations make a lot of enemies from their actions, changes in leadership or no. It's part of why Doma doesn't bug me like it does other people, as it was built off of things previously established to drive its story. Though, as I said last time, a discussion for another day.
The arc kicks off with the battleship, as it nears the location of the finals, be dragged off course by a remote hack, preventing them from reaching Alcatraz Tower, a facility built in the remains of the military-industrial complex the Kaiba brothers' foster father once used to attempt his own version of world domination. That tower representing the determination to defy the madness of the man and his machinations, and build their own ideal future. Thus, being dragged away as it's in sight like this is reflective of being denied the dream they've worked so hard for. The ship is pulled inside of a submarine, commanded by a distorted reflection of Seto himself.
And I kinda have to credit Studio Galp for this one. No, but Kaiba, why bother keeping it secret, this series is over 15 years old, was intentionally designed to look exactly like Toei Season 0 Seto, as the whole green hair thing? Yeah, Toei made that crap up. Purportedly because green is the cover of Envy in Western culture, except this was a Japanese series. Thus the reference just did not make sense for either the medium or the character.
That said, this factor is likely taking a bigger role with Noah, as he is envious of what Seto has achieved in the absence of himself from his purported role, using this opportunity to take revenge alongside the Big Five, the former division heads that openly betrayed Seto earlier. and have since lost their bodies due to the feedback of the trap they originally planned for Seto back then, which effectively killed them all and left their consciousness to wander cyberspace.
Which doesn't make much sense, as how Seto would have just left them plugged in there, as post-Mind Crush he's not that cruel. And there was absolutely no indication they actually jacked themselves into the Duel Monsters Quest video game to begin with. Hell, that's entirely idiotic for them to have done that, as then they'd have been vulnerable to the same trap they set up for Seto. They knew this. Hell, before this arc, everyone assumed that after the Duel Monsters Quest filler episodes, they just ended up straight up fired like they were in the manga. And the game itself was established to be running on an isolated server, so could not leave it to wander lost like this. This is why people dislike this arc.
Noah forces everyone that can duel to disembark from the ship, actively firing on them to isolate the lot of them, then forcing them into the trap of the ship's main feature, the virtual world, recreating an environment for those trapped here, and setting up the Big Five to permit them their intermediate revenge against those responsible for sending them adrift into cyberspace, forcing them all into duels with their actual bodies on the line to replace the ones they've lost, through which they can reclaim their fortunes, legally making them their successors, and rebuild their lives as captains of industry.
Even though two of the people they want to body swap with are women.
I'll be free to live out my fantasy of being a young teenage girl in Japan.
As I have said previously, no one uses the body swap story device well. It's just really damn creepy.
I'll give it this, the interim duels showcased in this arc are not entirely a waste, and the only moments of Deus Ex Machina seen are the Deckmaster system, which serves as just a series of exaggerated effects of various cards, or ones with effects that Konami would then retroactively create. Flame Swordsman's attack point transfer ability as a Deckmaster would first be seen when they finally made Blue Flame Swordsman a real card, with Blue Flame Swordsman, when he appeared later in the anime, also having the attack point transfer ability. But otherwise, this arc of the series served, when they were making more anime-only cards, as advertisement for cards seen in the real game, many of them coming from newly released or coming sets. I think the most annoying of them came from the Penguins deck, for there was a time in the game where you could create a card combo between Penguin Soldier and the spirit monster Tsukiyomi to repeatedly reset its effect, and clear the opposing player's field of monsters to whittle down their life points. Hell, most people only really remember this arc because of the cards they advertised, my absolute favorite of them being Black Flare and Mirage Knights.
Which have actually become viable cards to play with thanks to Konami releasing the Eye of Timaeus. Thanks for that.
And also Berserk Dragon and Exodia Necros, all of which were from the said Dark Crisis, which I actually pulled some of the good cards from back in the day. As I was pretty much the only person in my area to have pulled copies of Exodia, I could actually use that card for a short time before other tactics caught my interest. Moreover, seeing the cheering section actually doing something in this arc did buoy it up some, as, let's face it, most of the time they were superfluous characters. Hell, in the original version of things, there's actual nuance to the Big Five's actions. Konosuke Oshita, aka Gansley, the business strategist of the group, actually shows this in how his specialty is research into his opposition, meaning he actually has figured out that Yugi has two personalities, calling Atem Yugi Type B, and actually points out how impulsive Atem is in how he duels, which gets him into trouble and permits easily leading him into a trap since, as I've said, Atem is not as good a player as Yugi or when Yugi is supporting his playing, which plays into Konosuke's business strategist mindset of having anything which could harm the company backfire on its implementer.
He's also arguably the most intelligent and capable of the Big Five in actually playing this game. Thus, it's all downhill from here.
Then there's personnel manager Shizuo Otaki, which the dub did nowhere near the justice in conveying how absolutely creepy he is, with him choosing to intentionally try and steal Anzu's body. First by trying to lure her in by offering to fund her dream as a dancer, as Kaiba Corp in the entertainment incarnation of the company has funded Broadway musicals, which actually ties into a dream Anzu has while unconscious of her starring in a Dark Magician Girl themed one, which in the dub was a divergence which absolutely made no goddamn sense as it didn't even acknowledge this aspect of the characters.
I mean, it still doesn't make any sense for there to be an entire musical based around one character that, as far as anyone knows, was first created for a card game. But this is a universe where everything is decided by games of chance, and through the lens of cultural perspective, As I've discussed before, Japan has a lot of stage plays who draw their basis from fictional media and pop culture. There's a Sailor Moon stage play. There's a Sengoku Basara stage play. There's a Gintama stage play. There's a Death Note stage play. Saint Seiya has a stage play. Hell, Bleach has a rock musical. And it's hilarious!
But yeah, he uses this to lure Anzu in close and into a match for her body.
That's not fair. She's never even played Duel Monsters.
What about the time she dueled against my Valentine? And won?
She's never played Duel Monsters.
Or the time she dueled Joey in episode 2. And won?
She's never played Duel Monsters!
In which he reveals he is a dirty old man obsessed with resource management due to waste's impact upon the environment because he is in love with freaking penguins.
And now you all know what the abridged series was parodying with this guy versus his 4Kids version. His original characterization.
もはや君は万策尽きている。その体は私が有意義に使ってあげます。おのれ、もう少しで若い肉体が手に入ったのに。
Hell, the reason he turned on Seto originally was apparently he rejected a proposal to add living penguin sanctuaries as an attraction to the Kaiba'S amusement parks they were building, but only because Seto didn't understand the proposal he was given.
Also, animal theme parks and sections of amusement parks dedicated to animals are kind of notorious for cruelty and neglect to the animals kept in captivity. And as much as we joke that every time Seto Kaiba smiles a puppy dies, he's not actually that overtly malicious to go through with that kind of thing.
Something else worth mentioning is some of the self-awareness seen within this duel with Anzu and Yugi's relationship, and how Yugi recognized how much Anzu was always chasing a Tem.
僕はアンズが僕の名前を呼ぶたびに思う。本当はどっちのことを呼んでるんだろうって答えは分かりきっているけど。
But as the advice for dueling she looks back on shows, that's not entirely the case. Like many, she's confused by where the line between one and the other is. So while there's clearly some attraction there which is lampshaded in both sides of the series, it's clear it's all just complicated. Not helped by how both the series and Yugi's own social issues force Atem more and more in the driver's seat. But this time, it is Yugi that comes to her rescue. Chikusa and Oka matches the theme of all of Jonouchi's opponents, that they cheat to gain any advantage against him, which then backfires. Made more annoying because he is a corrupt lawyer.
Yes, I know that seems like an oxymoron.
Who knows how to game the system, and in the duel acts as judge, jury, and executioner with his word being law, using it behind the scenes to manipulate all of Jonouchi's gambling cards so they entirely fail him. At least until Noah reminds him that he's got a boss in this plan making sure they're playing fair. Why?
そんな汚い手でデュエルに勝っても、本当の意味で海馬瀬戸の仲間たちを倒したことにはならない。海馬瀬戸を完璧に乗り越えたことにはならないんだ。
Though from this, Seto, who caught sight of the duel, realizes they're all being manipulated for the true mastermind scheme. Soichiro Ota was the technology specialist, specifically such that pertained to military applications of any technology. He was the most aligned with Gozaboro's schemes, and ran their factories, turning on Seto when he had them destroyed to remove their war-torn history the company had.
Essentially the Obadiah stain to Seto's Tony Stark.
The duel against him, however, is the most odd, with Otogi, Honda, and Shizuka all his opponent, but Honda is a notoriously terrible player among his friends.
ホンダなんかデュエルのセンス全くないのよ。大丈夫ですか?
And Shizuka has never played, period, and worse, was gullible enough to believe Honda taught Jonouchi how to duel, so knows what he's doing, which he does not. And thus, why you should not lie to pretty girls to get their attention. But her terrible playing drags Honda down in how he tries to protect her, which leads to Honda being the only one to lose his body, as neither of them saw the bigger picture. I'll give Oda this. He fights with the machine's efficiency with how he battles in this game, winning despite the loss because he was able to defeat Honda. But as I said, this arc in between all this is the origins of the Kaiba brothers and their rise to managing the single most influential company in the world. Their parents? Mother died from illness and father died in a car accident. Their relatives took their inheritance for themselves and threw them into an orphanage where they were bullied mercilessly, only for chance to allow them an escape from their first meeting with Gozaburo Kaiba. Seto, having seen the man's success as a chess champion, had studied his plays and used this opportunity to bet their escape from this hell and permit them a better life they'd lost. But in a way, Mokuba wishes they'd never taken. Seto hasn't smiled in years. Not like he used to. Not since Gozaburo came into their lives. For upon winning their little match, Gozaburo took them in and pushed Seto farther and farther, trying to mold him into his little puppet, all while deriding his dream of creating entertainment venues.
ゲームこそ疲れ果てた心に安らぎと余裕を与える人間が生み出した知恵だ。
それでお前は海馬コーポレーションの後継ぎに手を挙げた。それは世界に君臨する王となるためだ。
And to make sure it stuck, he removed from them all entertainment, making sure he would do nothing but work and study around the clock, only for Mokuba's support and a small collection of Duel Monsters cards to allow him to endure the ordeals inflicted upon him, and continue in the development of his dream, only for that to come crashing down when the virtual imaging technology he invented was taken by Gozaburo, so he could profiteer off of it from armies who would just use it to more grandiosely direct the campaigns of war. What he created, being used to massacre thousands, all for the sake of one man's greed.
俺が開発したバーチャルシステムは戦争で死んでゆく大勢の人々の命と引き換えに巨万の富を手に入れようと企み、薄汚いあの男には絶対に渡すわけにはいかなかった。
Seto Kaiba, manga, anime, or dub, is an aloof, oppositional, dismissive jerk, so it can be easy, especially in the dub, to forget that the reason he became that and was so desperate to take over Kaiba Corporation was that he had to stop Gozaburo from using his creations to kill people.
In the manga, he describes what Gozaburo did in this as stealing his soul. Without much it's shown through the series that he's a technophile, his inventions are, more than anything, a part of him. An expression of who he is at his core. Just take his duel disc, for example. After creating them, no matter when another dueling platform is available, he always prefers it over anything else. In Dark Side of Dimensions, he even builds it into his suit. His creations, his technological revolutions, are so much part of him that this action of Gozaburo's is, at its deepest and most direct, an attack on his very soul. Seto spends a lot of time telling people how little he cares, but his actions make it clear just how big a lie that is, because it would have been much easier to simply go along with Gozaburo, to let his adopted father use his inventions without worrying about all the people being hurt and killed by them. That's what someone who didn't care would do. Instead, Seto began an impossible quest to take control of Kaiba Corporation away from him.
And if that's all true, then this is the day that the cruel, sadistic monster seen in Season 0 and the early days of the manga, that Atem had to penalty game out of his soul, was likely born. In order to undo what Gozaburo's done, he had to be as ruthless as his father and seize back from him his future.
ゴザブロは俺の開発したバーチャルシステムを軍事兵器に使い、俺の夢を踏みにじった。俺は心に決めた。あの男の全てを利用し、あの男を超えてみせると。
And it makes for a far more interesting and relatable character when you can understand what caused their fall from grace, and the story told with them that much more mature as a result.
But the sad thing of all that is, the only reason he was in this situation to begin with is that he was trying to honor his promise to take care of Mokuba. So as much as Mokuba can seem as whiny in this arc with how he wishes he had his brother back in the way they were as kids, there's also recognition that he also had a hand in shaping how Seto had changed, as he did it all for him. That wish for his old brother, only born out of guilt. And all this comes to a head as Mokuba is kidnapped by Oda wearing Honda's body, while Seto has to deal with the last of the Big Five, Kogoro Daimon, his former vice president. Card games on motorcycles! Kogoro, however, knows Seto almost as well as Mokuba, being the former advisor to his plans and malicious actions in his crusade to destroy Gozaburo. seeing how he destroyed lives and crushed competitors underfoot to achieve that, and not caring for the reason why. But it's him that finally opens a sliver of doubt to turn Mokuba on him, making it seem as if the guilt Mokuba feels is in fact a manipulation by Seto to force his loyalty.
俺は木馬を信じただけだ。俺たちの絆がゴ三郎を倒すと。
お前は木馬がどれほど傷つこうとその思いを骨まで利用し。
嘘だ。兄様が俺を利用してたなんて。
The day in question, where Seto accused him of betraying him and cast him out, Seto later reveals wasn't to force his loyalty, but a hedging of bets in the event he failed, so that if Gozaburo got rid of him after the takeover attempt, then at least Mokuba would still have a chance at a prosperous life. But the truth is, the plan only succeeded because Mokuba came in and gave the key to victory to him.
そして俺とお前二人にしかわからない駆け引き。俺たちを救ってくれる唯一の方法だと信じていたからだ。
Gozaburo, in the anime at least, committed suicide because of this incident, earning Seto control of Kaiba Corp and beginning his reformation of it. But how can you reform something when it is built as much on the blood of others as the past organization was?
俺がゲームにかける夢は殺人兵器などに負けはしない。滅びのバーストストリーム。
Noah then uses this sliver of doubt in tandem with a virtual illusion of Seto himself to turn the brothers against each other, further brainwashing Mokuba to be his toy, finally revealing amongst this that Noah is in fact their older stepbrother, attempting to break him with the idea of how his entire life was a lie. But that's interrupted as the rest of the group has to deal with the Big Five, using Honda's body as a bargaining chip to try and get more than one body for themselves. Aside from seeing another tag duel with Atem and Jonochi as the players, this one's wholly unremarkable, as the Big Five's strategy for it is, well, dumb, as there's no coherent crossover between their playing styles, the conflict between them making it ridiculously easy to bean each of them in return. It only becomes an actual challenge with the return of Five Gods Dragon.
Because, let's face it, that thing is a win condition in and of itself.
At least if you don't have the power of Black Flare and Mirage Knight, which act as an Honest tactic before Honest was even made into a card. Though their backup plan was Berserk Dragon, which is in turn countered by the debut of Black Magician Knight, which was pretty overrated as monster cards went.
Then again, for the Black Magician, there are neither pearly gates to aspire to, nor burning pits to avoid. Simply a revolving door.
With the Big Five permanently out of the picture, Noah takes central focus for the final third of the arc, revealing in full that, yes, he is Gozaburo's biological son. He died in a car accident. Somehow.
Jeez, how many people die in car accidents in this anime? Noah, Viper's son, seems to be their go-to for tragic deaths. Was there a rash of hit and runs in Japan around this time?
But in an effort to save him, Gozaburo usurped a war computer his company was working on to copy all of Noah's mind into it, building the virtual world to keep him from going insane. Seto was adopted as a rival and eventual replacement body for Noah, a plan that fell through when, 1. Seto was found to be superior to Noah in every way intellectually, and 2. Seto's a foreshowcased usurping of the company due to Gozaburo abusing his creations. Thus, the entire motivation for revenge has been not only stealing his place in the world, but preventing him from ever being able to claim it. But as a consequence of being the ruler of this virtual realm for so long, alongside his original upbringing being all based around grooming him to become a ruler of the world, this kid has a pretty big god complex going for him, the entire duel going through the biblical cycle of creation and human evolution, one befitting his name.
But here's where the real dumb of this arc rears its head again. What was Pegasus' plan? Use the Millennium Items to call back his dead lover's soul, put it into a playing card, then realize that card using Solid Vision so he could have her back. What has Seto Kaiba developed? Solid Vision holographic technology, which is controlled by specialized programs, computers, and user inputs, and thanks to the developments made for the Battle City tournament, is now fully portable. What is Noah and the rest of the beings trapped in this virtual world? They are now computer programs, and they have full access to all Kaiba Corporation computer data, meaning they have the blueprints and presumably the resources considering this group's connections and the automation of their ship to build any equipment they might need. Hey, morons! Build some remote holographic emitter platforms into robot drones and you're golden! Hell, you're better than golden! You have achieved on accident immortality as digital life forms!
Hell, the reason Noah's so angry was because he was left abandoned in this gigantic digital simulacrum, isolated from everyone and everything, and slowly going crazy as a result. But even by that measure, it no longer applies as, through such a system, he could fully interact with the living world again.
And this isn't just some far-off pipe dream. Robots already exist within this setting, within this arc itself. Essentially, the entire motivation outside of revenge for the antagonists of this arc, to get new bodies, is made moot since there was a much easier solution to fixing their state of being.
もしもう二度と兄様に妙な真似をしないって誓えるなら、俺兄様に頼んでやってもいいんだぜ。ノアに新しい体をあげてくれって。でも海馬コーポレーションの技術ならかなり精巧なアンドロイドができるはずさ。
The only explanation for why they didn't go that route is something Seto points out, an existing stigma against the fallibility of machines on Gozaburo's behalf, which might have made that seem untenable for Noah. Not help that originally he went a bit nuts and planned out how to commit worldwide genocide of the human race in around 30 days. And genocide? That's bad for business!
I'd say that could have been the day where any compassion for others in Gozaburo died, but let's face it, the man profiteered and built a business empire off of warfare. His soul was long gone.
所詮貴様の見てきたものは全て作り事の世界だが人間の社会こそ混沌とした究極の光と闇の世界だ。
But frustratingly, the reason Seto loses here and doesn't end this entire threat is Noah breaks his own rules and cheats, using the brainwashed Mokuba in the same way Pegasus did, as a human shield. And if there is one person Seto cannot harm, it's his brother. Thus, at the cost of winning the duel, Seto chooses something far more important than anything in his life, getting his brother back.
俺はあの時何度もくじけそうになった。しかし、お前が俺に送ってくれたカード、あれが俺を救ったのだ。お前の作ってくれたカードを見た時に俺は決意した。いつしか本物を手に入れてみせると。
The Blue-Eyes Dragon, his obsession with it, its beauty, and the reason he cherishes it, is all tied to their bond. How it was the light of hope in their darkest moments.
兄様ごめんよ、俺のせいで。
木馬。
ああ、海馬くん、木馬くん。いっそあの世に行けたならば再会を喜び合えたかもしれませんね。
Another big critique of this is how Aten actually has to finish things with Noah. He's the main character, yes, but most of the arc has been inexorably about Seto and Mokuba. This entire conflict is revenge against him. He should have been the one to finish things with his stepbrother and, in doing so, freed Mokuba from him. But no! Seto always seems to lose, even when everything says he should actually win. And even the show, to an extent, acknowledges this.
今のターン、海馬の場にはトワイライトゾーンドラゴンが残っていた。あれはバトルでは決して消滅しないモンスター。海馬は引き分けの道を捨て、あえてブルーアイズを召喚したんだ。木馬の心を取り戻すために。
So yeah, it's out to Atem to mop up the duel, showcasing the power of bonds as each of them in turn tear down Noah's self-aggrandizing justifications for his actions, and ending it all with a very, very familiar one-turn kill strategy against the spirit monster Noah's deck suddenly revolves around, mass summoning the Blue Eyes, who deal over 10,000 points of damage in one round.
At least someone won with Blue Eyes this weekend, right, Kappa?
I think the only reason this didn't piss off people more at the theft of the conclusionary arc was the revelation this whole plot was actually planned out by Gozaburo Kaiba, having transferred a copy of himself into the virtual world before he committed suicide, and manipulated his neglected son to perform all this. Thus he becomes the real big bad of the arc, despite him only now showing up, and it's Seto's job to get rid of him before he destroys the world?
Yeah, the big evil plan Noah came up with that led to his father abandoning him there. Gozaburo has decided that if he's going digital, might as well go through with it.
Thus, Seto calls him out to a duel, because doing such with chess would only likely result in Gozaburo's loss. And as expected, Gozaburo's researched the only true condition by which Seto's lost: Exodia. And since Gozaburo isn't a regular player of the game, he doesn't think to employ a draw strategy, but a dump strategy. Painful choice: to dump them, then summon the immortal Exodia Necros.
Meh, the two retrained versions are better. They help in recycling the parts to create the win condition. Also, backup soldier.
Plus, this one's massive weakness is if you lose a part in the grave, it dies instantly, which admittedly isn't so bad with the game in this era, but back when it was a thing after its release, Monster Reborn was still run in every deck, so the Achilles heel was a bit more, well, massive. So in a way, this becomes another symbolic event of how Seto Kaiba overcomes his own past, with the bastard of a man who corrupted his dream of an ideal world, and defeating the monster which dealt to him his greatest and only legitimate loss, and set him on his path of redemption. With that, everyone escapes before a missile aimed to hit the ship crashes down, Noah having recovered enough of a soul to face down Gozaburo and close this era of their family.
私はまだやらねばならんことがある。
僕たちはもう死んでしまったんだよ、父上。
And this arc will never be spoken of again.
とんだ邪魔が入ったが、俺たちの戦いはこれからだ。最終決戦の地、アルカトラズが待っているぞ。
僕は人間だ。機械なんかじゃない。
The virtual world arc, yeah, as I keep saying, it's dumb, but there is salvageable material in here.
I mean, the Seto Kaiba backstory elements have gone on to be appreciated and accepted as expanded canon with regards to the manga, and the idea of Noah isn't inherently a bad one since other series have explored this kind of situation of someone stuck in a digital space and unable to touch the outside world again. I've discussed it with my .hack and Mega Man Battle Network videos several times now. The issue, however, is more than anything one of timing in interrupting the ongoing Battle City arc. But the timing behind it is the only reason why it exists. I think it might have been a better received arc had there not been the obvious implication of the robotics elements, or there been any lip service to them trying and failing to get the holographic tech to work right with regards to recreating those locked in there in the real world. And hey, Noah is clearly made out to be a victim in all this between his parental abandonment and Seto outshining him in everything he wanted to do. So he isn't exactly a bad villain, and they do achieve the correct empathy about him by his end, thanks to his father usurping his role as chief villain of the arc and then casting him aside. So you can see the manipulation of the believed manipulator, and how much of it has been born out of childishness he was never able to grow out of due to the stagnation forced upon him in the virtual world without anything to interact with. And I think the duels could have helped hold things up as well instead of hindering the whole proceedings were they, 1, more focused on, and 2, weren't reliant on a series of anime-only effects, but advertising more of the real cards. As when the real cards got involved and showcased, well, those moments were the highlights of the arc. But the Deckmaster system from beginning to end was just an ongoing series of Deus Ex Machina powers for a given situation, and the Deckmaster rule set kept getting exchanged or ignored. It essentially recreated people's issues with the Duelist Kingdom arc without the defenses for them, and that the part of the show that was meant to showcase cards and strategies people would then want to play with wouldn't actually work that way. So if you were already a player, what was the point? And if you were a fan of the anime story, you'd be discouraged from playing if they didn't work the way they did in the show.
a problem not solved with the franchise until they hit GX, even though GX tended to do that at points as the cards were written to not have several of the limitations Konami would add independently to the real versions.
But like much of the series, I do find there is an increase in appreciation of this arc when watching it subbed over watching it dubbed. Once more due to a decrease in antagonism among people, and dialogue that such was inserted over returned to more flesh out the situation and actions, which make them all seem more, well, human as opposed to cartoonish caricatures, and the tragedy of the Kaiba'S siblings' various situations does ring more honestly, as does the support between the characters playing its effects on Noah in the final stretch of the series, in showing him what he really wanted all this time, but was prevented from having both due to his father's expectations and his forced upon post-death isolation. Noah's story is ultimately a tragic one befitting the series. It's just sad it's bogged down by all these other, less appreciated elements of it.
At least with that done, we can continue onwards into our look at Battle City, with the finals where the sociopath attempts to straight up murder people several times.